Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are, whenever you're watching this. This is Floating in Dreams. Today we are going to be comparing 4 eyeshadow palettes, and we're going to ask ourselves, are these dupes or not? Let's find out in today's video. Welcome if you're new here. Thank you so very much for joining me today. Today's video is going to be a comparison of 4 palettes that I think kind of do a similar thing. Some of these are more similar than others, I'm not gonna lie, but I thought it could be interesting to show you some comparative swatches and doing all that. So this video is going to consist of 2 parts. First, I'm going to talk about the palettes individually, and then we're gonna go down to the floor and we're gonna do some comparative swatches and seeing how similar these actually are. In case you're new here, hi, my name is Maaike. I live in the Netherlands. I like to come on here to chat about eyeshadow palettes, essence and couture reviews, getting the use out of my makeup. Because I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, I deem myself a snow angel. And if you would like to join the Snow Angel Club, you don't have to be a snow angel yourself at all, then definitely click subscribe down below. So which are the 4 palettes we are going to be talking about? You may have already seen it on the thumbnail, but I sort of start the whole thing with this little guy, the Natascha Mini Retro. And of course, there are now rumors that we're going to get a bigger version of this palette, but I was like, maybe you already own that. So that's why I want to compare this to some larger palettes that I feel give me a similar vibe. So I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get down to the floor. But yeah, the Mini Retro. And then I think the obvious comparison is the Lime Crime Venus XL2. So I'm already doing that comparison. This was already pre-planned, you guys. That whole like leaked information about the Retro Glam is just like there. Like I planned this video 2 months ago that I was gonna do it this month. So maybe I now need to be like a fortune teller. I don't know. But yeah, this I've always mentioned as being the best version of what's currently on the market, as being a larger version of the Mini Retro, because you would get those rosy tones and those sagey greens with some warm tones thrown in. But when I was using it, I got a very similar-ish vibe from the ABH Nouveau, which I think is a bit like out of the ballpark perhaps, but it's got those warm tones and then you do get those like sagey greens. This could be like those rosy shades, but they're a little bit more peachy leaning perhaps. You do get some warmth. The Lime Crime palette actually has a shade like Peacock in. It's a little bit different. It's more brown, I feel. So I thought that this could make for a good comparison as well, especially if you look at this, if you leave out these 5 shades, that's like Mini Retro vibes. So I don't know. And then again, this is even a little further away from what those palettes do. But then I thought, Carli Bybel? Like, this is, of course, I'm not even sure if this is still available, but I think this is the OG palette of like cool tones with some warm tones. So even though these cool tones are in green, I feel I get like this same like ethereal garden fairy kind of vibe from it, but this is less garden and more fairy. Does that make sense? I don't know. We'll talk about these 4 palettes today, and then we'll go to the floor to see how similar they actually are. So let me talk about the instigator of the whole thing, the Natascha Denona Mini Retro. And in case you're unfamiliar, I'll pop a picture up on the screen if I can find it anymore of that leaked palette. So the idea is now, the buzz through the grapevine is that there's going to be a Retro Glam palette, which is a bigger version of this, and it's going to be the midi style. Not sure anything, I haven't heard anything else about like release dates or how expensive it's going to be. No clue, but I'm happy it's actually going to happen because the Mini Retro is my favorite mini palette from Natascha Denona. It's got 2 mattes right here, and then you get 3 shimmers. You get some sagey greens that on me, because I already have a cool undertone, look like grayish tone greens. And I think that this can look quite ashy if you don't have the right undertone as well. Then we have something that's really nice and textured in this shimmer here. It's almost like a duochrome. And then you just have the peachy tones here. So you get a matte and a shimmer green, a matte and a shimmer peachy thing, and then you get the duochrome to top it off. For a 5-pan, I feel we can do a lot with this. You get at least 3 looks. You can use all 5 shades together, the greens with the topper, the peachy shades with the topper, and that's already 3 looks. You can, of course, also mix and match the peaches with the greens if you'd like. There's a lot you can just do with this. So for 5 pans, I feel it does enough for me to warrant the price point, and I have always highly recommended it. But I have always said that I feel these two things are similar. So you'll see when we go down to the floor that there are definitely similar-ish shades in here. Now these two shades up here are more like toppers, and they're not as pigmented as a lot of people wanted them to be. Like these are difficult to build up by themselves to be worn all over the lid. They are more like inner corner highlights, or for instance topping this shade over this, that works really well. But these do, I feel they need a bit more of a base. So it's similar, but not quite the same as what we get in the Mini Retro. And of course, that's only 5 shades. It's more peachy leaning. And here we do get something that could be peach, but it's more like a rosy peach. So it's more rosy, I feel. And then we do get the warm tones here and here and here. And then this is that like duochrome shade that I feel the ABH has as well. Here it's called Locust. And it's more like brown to green gold, whereas the one in the Anastasia is more like blue brown. So it is different, but I feel they do like a similar-ish thing, which is why like I just felt that the Nouveau was giving me these kind of vibes more so than the Mini Retro. But yeah, you get some really stunning shades in here. And I love that you get that sage green. That's like a really good transition shade. And this one, just like the Natascha Denona, has that grayish undertone on me, which I really enjoy. And it does pull quite light as well, which is what the Natascha Denona does too. Then the ABH Nouveau. So the ABH Nouveau palette I tried in September for the first time, and I like it, but I had a bit of an issue with the shimmers in here, which is another reason why it reminded me of the Lime Crime, because those shimmers can also be a little bit more difficult to build up. I experienced these to be quite patchy, and for instance, a shade this deep and layering this on top did absolutely nothing, I felt. So I felt these didn't build up the way I had expected them to be, especially because of what I know ABH palettes can do. But again, like I said, these 5 shades I feel give me Natascha Denona Mini Retro vibes, and then some of these like warmish things that we have over here give me Lime Crime Venus XL vibes, but more warm toned. If you have olive skin, this is great. If you have a deeper skin tone, because this does have more depth, it works. If you were looking for those palettes but have it be a cool tone brown shades rather than a warm toned one, then this one gives you that as well. So of course we do have that random purple that none of these other palettes have. But that is my bridge into the Carli Bybel, because I feel that the Carli Bybel is like a very ethereal looking palette. We get a full row of like warm tones and then a full row of cool tones in here. And it's got like the periwinkle stuff. So I think wisteria with some of these shades from the ABH Nouveau can be really pretty. So this one I feel is perhaps the most out of the ballpark. I'm not expecting to find many dupes in this palette when we go down to the floor at all. But I do feel that, for instance, this like golden shade isn't fully like yellow tone, but it seems to have a bit of green. Same for this like antique gold shade. Like the only thing I feel we're not gonna get from any of these palettes are these like these reddish tones. But everything else might be like the more periwinkle warm tone version of anything else that we've got going on. So yeah, the Carli Bybel palette was really lovely. It's one I almost didn't buy, but then I got it on a huge deal and I pretty much got it for free for, was it Black Friday or a Christmas sale 2 years ago? So that's the only reason why I have it. So it's not my favorite ABH palette at all, but I feel it's got a couple of good shades and I didn't want to rope it into this comparison because it kind of pulled at that part of my brain where I was like, might be similar, might be similar. So let's get down to the comparison now. Okay, so welcome to the floor. So let me see if we can open all of these up. So these are all of these color stories in one frame. And then I think you can see what I mean with this one not like being the odd one out, the Carli Bybel, but especially this, like if you cover up this half of the palette, that's a Mini Retro for me. So let me go Mini Retro first and compare it to everything we've got going on. So first I'm going to compare these 5 shades to these 3 palettes, and then I'm going to go between these 3 palettes and see how similar those are. So I think this is the Natascha Denona shade that makes the palette, and I feel it looks quite similar in the pan to the Lime Crime shade called Crown, but maybe also this from the ABH Carli Bybel palette, Bowley. So let me see. I think this is more satiny though. That's a different... So that's them swatched on the fingertips. So this is the Natascha Denona. Peachy undertone, but a very nice vibrant sparkle. This is the Lime Crime, which is more of a like beigey undertone almost. It's less warm. And then you don't get as much of a dimensional sparkle, but you do get some shine, but it's not as high shine as the Natascha Denona one. And then finally, the Carli Bybel shade, which again, has nice shine, but it's not as textured. But it does, as you can see, have less of an undertone than any of the other shades here. So now we need to go over that sagey green shimmer. And I do think that Myth is too light for it, but I'm going to take both of these and swatch it against it, and this Wings shade from ABH. And also this Hope shade, which is more cocky though. So I know it's not going to go, but at least you can see how similar it all is. So let's do Natascha Denona first, then the Lime Crime, and then the ABH. So that's what these shades all look like. Ooh, you can tell that it's all quite similar, but the ABH, this is the Natascha Denona one, definitely has the most gray and less green. So, Natascha Denona, look at that. It looks almost silver in some lighting. Myth and Ivy from Lime Crime, which are far lighter and just not as dark. And then we have Wings from ABH, which just doesn't have the same depth as the Natascha Denona. And that's Hope from Natascha Denona, which is far more golden toned and not as cool toned as the Natascha Denona. But I think actually, let me show you that, which is why I was trying to layer these when I was doing the look. But if you take a bit of Wings and you layer it over this, I think you can sort of get to a similar thing. Well, you still get that goldeny undertone. But do you see that that gives you the depth that Wings is missing? So I think you can use the ABH to create a similar vibe. It will just have a warm undertone rather than a cool undertone. And then we're going to take the next shade in the Natascha Denona. So this is that matte sagey green. And here again, I feel it is deeper than anything else we've got going on. But of course, I'm going to swatch it against Sage from Lime Crime, which is a lot lighter. And I'm going to swatch it against Liberty from ABH. And then again, you can see the difference in undertone. This is almost gray. This is far more green and lighter, and this is much more warm toned. So this way you can also see that undertones matter, and that depending on what your undertone is, or your skin tone, you can pick and choose accordingly. So I do think the ABH is closest in terms of depth. Like you can just see that the Lime Crime shade, like it barely shows up, it seems. But that's because it's very light. And if it had a little bit more depth, then it would have shown up a lot better. But yeah, on my fair skin, you can definitely still see it. I can use this in the crease and there's absolutely no issues there. And then I'm going to take the Peachy shade from the Natascha Denona. And I think this is the most similar from the Lime Crime. And this is going to be the most similar from the ABH. And then I think, shall I go Chai or Cindy from, I think this one. It's probably too warm. Like, if this had been lighter, it could have worked for a comparison. But this is the Natascha Denona shade. This is the Lime Crime shade. And you can see that the Lime Crime and the Natascha Denona mattes, when they are similar-ish in depth, I feel they work quite similar on my skin as well, like quality-wise. And the ABH matte here as well, that's a bit softer, I feel. And then there we have the Carli Bybel. So yeah, you can see the Carli Bybel is far more warm toned and deeper than these three things. The Lime Crime one is definitely more pinky almost. It's very cool toned. It almost looks like it's got a lavender sort of pull to it. And then the Natascha Denona one is far more peachy. And then the ABH, it's peach, but it's more like brown toned, and it's even lighter than this. And then the final shade in the Natascha Denona Mini Retro is this one, which I think I want to compare to Stella and Crown, because they are similar-ish. No, Crown doesn't make a lot of sense now I look at it. So just Stella. And then from ABH, we don't really get that pinky tone here. And here again, it's more like a lavender, and this is far too deep. So I don't think the Carli Bybel has anything there. So we're just going to do the shimmering peachy shade from Natascha Denona compared to the Lime Crime. And then you do see that the Lime Crime does have a little bit of peach running through it. And I think like that, I mean, they're not the same for sure. Like the Natascha Denona has far much more of a stronger reflect. Like the shimmers in the Lime Crime are more satin leaning with two toppers. That's pretty much how the palette works. And in the Natascha Denona, we get more intense shimmer shades for sure. But I feel like what they can do on the lid if you put it in a look, that's very similar. Maybe this shade? But that's far too golden toned. I just want to put something there. No, that's very golden toned. Do you just see? And then we might as well just go in with that golden shade from the Carli Bybel. See, those are very similar, different, I should say. And then I could take Laurel from the Lime Crime. That I think is too green toned. Yeah. Yeah, Laurel is close-ish, but it's more like a gold, like a soft gold shade. It's got a green undertone for sure. So I would say the Lime Crime is more green. This is far more cool toned in the green section, and then some warm tones that aren't super warm. And then here we get more warmth, and here we get even more warmth. So now that we've looked for shades that look similar in the pan, comparing everything to the Natascha Denona Mini Retro, I think you can see that this Lime Crime palette definitely does a similar thing, and it's cool tone greeny shades, but this is doing the same thing in a more warm toned undertone. But for instance, this or this may be similar as well, which is why I wanted to rope in the Carli Bybel, because it's just giving me a similar vibe. So let me show you some comparative swatches between those other three palettes as well. So this is actually the Lime Crime one. And then this is the ABH one. And this is the Carli Bybel one. So again, a similar depth, I feel, but not doing quite the same thing. Like this looks straight up rosy compared to these browns. So let me clean a finger and get some of this In Bloom shade, because yeah, see, that's far more cool toned. So the ABH again has the warmth, and the Lime Crime has the coolness, which has been like, that's been the way it's been the entire time. And then in the Lime Crime palette, we get this shade down here called Mystic. And I think Libra from the Carli Bybel may be close to it. I'm pretty sure Libra is going to be more silvery. Ooh, very similar textures. And this is more rosy indeed. Ooh, this is far more plummy. Yeah. But this, hold on. It has a different shade to it, of course, but if we then take that green shade from the Natascha Denona, do you just see that the shade from the Carli Bybel is like the green shade from the Natascha Denona Mini Retro? It doesn't have the same texture, but it has that same sort of like deeper base and then a very light, but then in a purple hue rather than in a green hue. So that's why I feel the Carli Bybel is definitely one that's comparable, not because of it being a straight up dupe, but doing a similar vibe. Now, is there anything else here? Let's do the deepest shades here. So the Lime Crime, the ABH, and then this is far more cool toned. Ooh, the ABH is nice. So this is Lime Crime, which is, on me, it's like a purpley plum. It's not a brown. This is the ABH, making sure we keep the orders correct, which is far darker and very cool toned and lovely. And then this from the Carli Bybel is also cool toned, but it's very light compared to that deepest shade from ABH, which is why I feel this is really good for people with deeper skin tones, because you just get that deepening up shade that none of these other palettes have. This works for me because on my skin you can just see that purple coming through, but if you have a warm undertone, a shade like this is going to actually pull warm toned and it may not work. Now some other shades I want to compare here are West from the Lime Crime, Thorn, and this shade called Lily. And then just for completion's sakes, we're gonna put Aura in there as well. Aura is again very different, but I think again in terms of the vibe it gives, like this is West. It's like such a good bronzy brown shade, and this is what Thorn does, which is again like thinner, sheerer, but it does have that vibrancy. Oh, hold on. We're gonna have to do another swatch in a minute. This is Lily, which is surprisingly my favorite shade in the entire ABH palette. It's a warm tone, I know, shocker. But I think that perhaps if we put Thorn over West, we may get a similar vibe. And then this is what Aura does, which again has that more like plummy cranberry base to it, which is definitely different. But that works. But let me see what happens if we put Thor over West. I'm not sure if the effect is going to be strong enough. Usually when you swatch, try to cover swatches on the back of your hand, it never works as well as on the eye because of the different texture in your skin. And that's not really doing anything. West is too deep to be topped by Thorn, but I definitely think that shade is one. Let me do it again. Grab a little bit of Thorn and a little bit of that. Again, the Natascha Denona will be more vibrant. But I do think Thorn has that sort of like peachy base that I was missing in Crown. So maybe if you mix Crown with Thorn, you might be able to replicate this shade a little bit. So yeah, no straight up dupe for that one for sure, but I like that. And I like Lily gives me, again, a similar vibe to that, but then with it being deeper than the Natascha Denona. Now, is there anything else here that really warrants comparing? I'm going to do Locust and Peacock, which again, they're not the same, but I feel they do a similar thing. So this is Locust, which is like that brown, green, gold sort of moment. And at the time this palette was released, we never got shades like that in palettes. So that's an exciting one, I think. And this is Peacock, which is like burgundy leaning. And then it's got the blue flash. So that's what those two shades look like. But yeah, those are like duochrome shades that are in here. I do want to see how this Jode shade, yeah, this, again, like that very vibrant sort of shine that I think that Lime Crime is lacking the most, which is why a lot of people didn't like it, because this palette was released at a time when those really vibrant shimmers were all the rage, and this just doesn't have that. But if that's not your preference, this is still a good palette, you know? Not everything has to be boom kapow in your face glam makeup, and I feel that the Lime Crime nicely caters to that if that's what you're looking for. Maybe the Eve shade here. What does that do? It's very rosy though. Ooh. That's very pretty too. So could that be, ooh, that's like almost like the rosy version of that shade. Again, less shine, not gonna lie. And take a bit of Aura again. Yeah. I think that works. And I'm now sort of seeing what the Carli Bybel is missing that the other palettes have. It's like this kind of shade. So I think I want to do Forbidden, Isle, and Phoenix for a minute. Because this only has that, or it has that very strong golden tone, but nothing in this family in terms of a shimmer. So this is Forbidden. That's Phoenix. And then we have Isle, which is far more golden toned, as you can just see. So then let's take these two golds for a minute to see how similar they are. This is Maud, which is lighter, and then this is far more yellow toned. But again, I feel that that's why I wanted to rope in the Carli Bybel, because I just feel undertone wise, the shades are different, but I feel in terms of what you're getting, it is similar-ish. So to round it up for what we're doing on the floor here, the Natascha Denona Mini Retro is still like different enough for me to warrant having both of these palettes, for instance. So I feel that this is softer, more muted, perfect for every day. It's never going to be too much in your face. I feel that in terms of warm tones, these are the only three I'm not really drawn to. Everything else I do like, because on me, these two are more plummy. So they work really well for deepening up these like rosy tones for sure. This has no deepening up shades whatsoever. This is really nice if you have a warmer undertone, or if you have deep skin or olive skin. This is going to look very pretty on you. And if you just want that ethereal vibe, then the Carli Bybel, I'm not sure if it's still available, but that one is a good one as well. So if you still have that one in your collection, that might work as well. So that was the comparison there. I haven't filmed it yet as I'm filming this part of the video, so I hope it was successful. Thank you so very much for joining me today. Thumbs up the video if you liked it. I hope it was helpful to show you some of the differences and similarities of these palettes. And let me know in a comment down below if there are any palettes you want me to compare. Granted, I do need to own them, of course, so if you want to make sure I can do that video, don't request things I don't have. My entire eyeshadow palette collection video is up for you, so you can very easily see what it is I do and don't have. So yeah, without further ado, thank you so very much for watching today, and then I hope you would like to come back for more, subscribe to the channel. I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!